Okay, so Web3, right. It's this whole thing about a decentralized internet, where users have more control. At least that's the idea. But then you come across something like Pump.fun, and it's like, hold on a second. Is this really what Web3 is all about?
Yeah, complicated might be an understatement. Pump.fun is, oh, it's definitely a fascinating case study. But it's also controversial. When we talk about the realities of Web3 and all.
Totally. It's like we're being sold this utopia, this perfect vision of the internet, and then bam, reality hits. So, for our listener, today we are diving deep into this article. It's all about Pump.fun and what it means for Web3. And I think this is important because this isn't just some niche tech thing. This actually affects all of us.
It really does.
Yeah.
You see, the internet, the one we use every day, it all comes down to trust. We trust these platforms with so much. Our data, our money, even our connections. And Web3, at its core, is trying to change that, to decentralize that trust, take it away from these big corporations, and ideally, give it back to users.
Okay, so break it down for me. How does a platform like Pump.fun actually work? What are they doing?
Well, in the simplest terms, they've created this space, this digital space. And basically what they're doing is they're coordinating pump and dump schemes. But it's in the cryptocurrency market.
So it's like the Wild West, but with cryptocurrency.
Kind of, yeah. Just with this, I don't know, a new coat of paint, maybe. A shiny new tech sheen, right?
So maybe not exactly the utopian vision of Web3 then.
Not exactly, no. See, the thing about these pump and dump schemes is that they prey on, well, they manipulate information. And they exploit this volatile nature of cryptocurrency. So imagine this. You've got a group of people, and they decide to artificially inflate the price of a cryptocurrency. They coordinate their buying, and they spread all this hype. That's the pump part. And by doing this, they lure in, well, unsuspecting investors, people who, understandably, are enticed by the promise of making some quick money. And then, just when the price is sky high,
they pull the rug out.
Exactly. The people who started it all, the ones who initiated the pump, they sell off everything, all their holdings, but at that inflated price. So they get a huge profit, and that's the dump.
And then the average investor, the one who bought in when the hype was at its peak, they're the ones left holding the bag.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
It's a classic case of history repeating itself, That allure of getting rich quick, especially in a space that can seem as complicated as cryptocurrency, is really tempting to people. And Pump.fun, well, they're really good at playing on that very human desire.
So these pump and dump schemes, they need chaos, right? Like to really work.
Yeah.
They need a market that's unpredictable,
Unpredictable.
where things are moving up and down, susceptible to hype.
Yeah.
And is there anything more volatile than cryptocurrency?
You're absolutely right. That volatility, it's like the perfect breeding ground for these kinds of manipulations. And that's what makes this whole thing about Pump.fun even more concerning when you think about the bigger picture of Web3.
Because this isn't just about some people, losing some money.
No.
This feels bigger.
It is bigger.
It has bigger implications.
It does. The article we're looking at, it makes this point about the long-term damage that these schemes, these platforms, that they can inflict. Web3, it's all about giving power back to the users, right? But that only works if people trust the system.
Right. It's like we were saying earlier, it all comes down to trust.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the foundation. And what Pump.fun is doing, it's eroding that foundation. Every time they do one of these pump and dumps.
It's like building a house on sand.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
You can't. This article, it points out how this whole thing discourages long-term investment in Web3. And it makes sense. I mean, why would you, as an investor, put your money into a technology when all you're seeing are these get-rich-quick schemes?
It creates this feeling that Web3 is more about gambling than actual innovation.
Yes. And that actually leads to the next point, the danger of creating this culture of speculation. Web3 has so much potential, it could really be revolutionary. But if it's just associated with risky bets and quick profits...
Well, it's like that saying, right? If it seems too good to be true.
It probably is.
It probably is.
And it makes it really difficult to separate the legitimate projects, the ones that have real-world uses,
right,
from the ones that are just trying to make a quick buck.
So it's not just individual investors, it's the potential of Web3 itself. Like, it could be stifled before it even really gets going.
Which brings us to another really crucial point from this article, the potential for regulation.
See, this is what's interesting to me, because Web3 is all about no regulation, right? Like less interference. But if platforms like this, if they become what people think of when they think of Web3...
it could actually lead to more regulation.
That's crazy. It's like they're shooting themselves in the foot and then...
and taking everyone else with them.
Exactly.
That's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Web3 wants to operate outside these traditional systems. But when you have activities like this, these pump and dumps, it raises red flags.
Yeah.
Regulators, they're going to see this and think, well, we need to step in.
Mm-hmm.
And that could stifle the innovation that Web3 needs.
It's like a few bad apples ruining it for everyone.
And that actually leads us to the final and maybe the most insidious consequence that the article brings up. Stigmatization. The whole Web3 community is going to be painted with the same brush.
It's like Web3 is going to get this reputation.
Yeah.
And it might be hard to shake.
People will see these pump and dump schemes and think, oh, it's all just scams. It's all just people trying to make a quick buck.
And that undermines the whole point of Web3.
Right.
So where do we go from here? Is there a solution? I mean, can Web3 even exist without these kinds of platforms and the problems that they bring?
Well, the article doesn't really give us a clear answer,
Yeah.
but it does bring up some really important questions.
Like what?
Well, about balance,
How?
On the one hand, you've got this drive for innovation.
Yeah.
This push to see what technology can do.
Right, which is really what Web3 is all about, right, at its core.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But then on the other hand, you've got this potential for exploitation.
Yeah.
For these platforms to be used in ways that really weren't intended.
So how do you encourage the innovation without also enabling the bad actors?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it makes you think about regulation. Because Web3 has always been about decentralization.
Right.
Freedom from oversight.
Less interference.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But when you see platforms like Pump.fun, you have to wonder if maybe some regulation is needed.
It's like by trying to avoid regulation,
Yeah.
you're almost guaranteeing that it's going to happen.
It's a real catch-22. If Web3 is going to be taken seriously, if it wants to be a real alternative,
Yeah,
it has to address these problems.
I think so too.
And for our listeners, I think it's about asking the tough questions. It's about being informed. You can't just jump into something new without understanding what could go wrong.
We can't just assume the best.
Right. Because the future of Web3, it depends on the choices we make today.
Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive into Pump.fun. We hope you learned something new today. And as always, keep asking those questions. Thanks for listening.